All right, well, welcome everyone. We are very pleased to have Scott Likens here in person. If you were at the morning session, he was there virtually and in person. But here we're only getting the in-person version. And I think we're really excited to have two of our resident experts within the College of Business that are AI, Dr. Sheila Boysen and Dr. DeMory. And both have different backgrounds in where they come from and what they see in AI. And I think the first question that I think we all want to kind of get a sense of is, and I talked to Scott about this last night at dinner, is that I'm an AI user, but I also realize I'm getting myself out of a job because I just feel like AI is going to do my job one day. And so maybe that's the first question, because I think a lot of the students here that are in the crowd, as well as the non-students, we are like professionals working in corporate America in jobs, and maybe I think there's a fear of, if we really embrace this thing, am I getting myself out of a job? And maybe from your perspective, Scott, and then we can see what the others might think.
Sure. Simple answer is no. I think if you look at over the years, calculators and Excel didn't put accountants out of a job. Tractors didn't put farmers out of a job. It allowed us to exponentially create the things we've been creating. Will it change jobs? The answer is absolutely. And I shared this morning, we've been studying jobs over the last 2.5 years, specifically on AI impact. About 1 billion job postings over the last few years, over I think 18 countries. But in general, what we're seeing is the role, the tasks within the role of the job are changing. And one of the stats is they changed 66% just in the last year. Meaning what you have to do to be an accountant or a software engineer or a project manager or a business expert, the tasks are changing because of AI. And they're changing fast. But those roles haven't changed. Not many of the roles have gone away. We're looking at over 10,000 job roles, and very few have disappeared, but almost all of them have changed. So jobs are changing. I think the thing I worry about is the pace at which AI is changing things is a little uncomfortable. My background is working on the first browser and the internet, seeing e-commerce and then social media, and then this world we're living in today with real-time data and information all the time. That happened over decades. This is happening much faster, although AI has been around 70 or 75 years. Generative AI is 3 years old this month for ChatGPT, 2 or less years old for the enterprise. It's not been that long. So the time scale is changing. Jobs and the tasks that make up that job role are changing, but I think in a good way. One of the stats I gave this morning was industries that are highly exposed to AI, like mine, accounting and professional services, the ones that are leading in to use AI to accelerate or enable their people are seeing 3 times revenue per employee increase. That's a huge number for a CEO to think about. I can get 3 times the revenue out of my employees. That will affect the workforce. It's going to affect hiring plans. You may see less hiring, but less firing. So I think all of that says that the jobs will change, job roles will change, new jobs will be created. For a little time, we had prompt engineering was the hottest role on LinkedIn. Now you don't even see the term within 1 year. So jobs will be created, jobs will be changed, jobs will go away, some of them. But in general, I don't think you're out of a job. I think you're going to use AI to increase your impact at your job. We talked about it. Those surveys that you spend all the time on, let AI do that. You focus on the results and how you're going to act on that. So I'm bullish. As a software engineer, maybe 2 years ago, it was always learn to code. If you want to quit your job, learn to code. You don't hear that anymore. But the reality is my best AI software engineers are my best engineers originally. Now the lazy engineers, they're going to fall out, and I'm okay with that. They're not leaning in, they're fighting it, they weren't that good anyway. Go find something else. But my best engineers are 10 and 20 times better today, just after 3 or 4 months of leaning into using AI. So to me, that's a net positive. I can produce a lot more, my team can produce a lot more for the business. The business can then make that 3x revenue. That creates the growth, which then creates new opportunities. So I think it's a flywheel. Jobs will change, but they have. We just don't remember because it's over a longer period of time. Long answer. Sorry. Any thoughts?
It's hard to follow that up. But I think that's exactly how I think about it, and what I'm seeing too, and if I talk just a little bit about my background and where I'm spending a lot of time hanging out and playing with AI, but also with the human beings that are navigating that change too. As an executive coach, a leadership coach, focusing on leadership development and transformation at scale in businesses, this is tremendously disruptive. So I'm not trying to be dismissive of that. That is very true. I think it's disruptive for everyone and for everything. When we talk about traditional education, learning is absolutely, and it probably has not been this way for some time, but no longer are you just looking to be, officially or formally learning from the age of 5 to 22. We have to be lifelong learners because the speed of change of this technology and how we have to be working alongside that technology as it's changing is requiring us to constantly be in that learning mode. But the positive side that could still feel disruptive is that there's going to be new jobs, many jobs we can't even predict yet what these jobs are going to be. That's a little bit scary, but I think we just have to be up for the challenge when we talk about education, because if someone's coming into their degree program at 18 years old, by the time that they are leaving, jobs exist that didn't even exist when they started going to school. So how do we prepare learners for what's on the other side of that? It's a big challenge, but I think it's a really exciting challenge, and it's helping them to prepare for that lifelong learning that they're going to have to be taking part in. Yeah.
You guys gonna leave anything for me? Another question?
It's great to go first.
So from my standpoint, I do agree. I don't think it's necessarily going to replace jobs. I think where it is going to impact our roles and our jobs is it's going to really separate those who embrace AI appropriately and those who misuse it. Right? There are people that I work with, people I know, where maybe AI becomes the only thing they use to answer a question or solve a problem, but they're not learning, right? They're not retaining any of that information. So the jobs that will be the ones that are successful and continue on will be for people who know how to use it as a co-pilot, as a partner in their role instead of a replacement. Because you're going to find people in the workforce who do know how to use it appropriately, who do know how to use it to improve upon themselves and double down, triple down on the revenue they can bring to a company. But you're also going to find those who either don't adapt to it, don't want to, and I think those are the jobs that are going to shift. Those are the jobs that are going to go away. It won't be the role itself. It'll be the person that has the role.
That's a great point, and I guess maybe a question.
Nice.
Well, I was going to ask him follow up another question. Is because you're saying the roles, right? And I think maybe the question I would ask back is, I'll let you go first, James, this time to give you fair airtime. Is the ethics piece, because I think you made a comment about people have to know how to use it correctly or incorrectly, and they might do it unethically, maybe to get ahead. And I guess if you're a leader in a company, how would you maybe explore assessing whether your workforce is ready for AI, and how do you implement that?
Yeah, so I do work with a handful of companies on implementing AI tools, and what I do see as a common thread is the companies that help their team understand it first, why it's relevant to the business, they do much better with aligning their team with those goals, making it less scary. I also have customers who I've talked to, and they say, you know what, we're going to use this to fire 9,000 people, right? But they're wrong. They will not. It does not replace the human being. And that's where the fear comes in. It's going to be from the top down. We're embracing this for all of us to do more, to do better. Hopefully, I'd love to hear your opinion on this at some point during this, is hopefully it becomes where we are getting our time back as human beings and not just employees, right? I know that's Elon's whole thing, but that would be the ideal use of AI. But from that standpoint, we need to use it appropriately. I still do think there need to be some sort of guardrails, but that's where I'd see it.
Yeah, I love the comment. A friend of mine on LinkedIn, Frank Cassell, he's pretty prolific on LinkedIn. He posted something about this yesterday. He said, remember the days before we worked 9 to 9, always on, always connected? My response was 9 to 9 would be great. In the global world, I'm working 5 to 9 or 10, and then you're working in between. So there's the promise that it does that. I worry we're too far down this spiral of always on, always connected. instant intelligence at your fingertips. We have to, as humans, have to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And I worry we're not able to. So I'm not sure I'm as bullish on that. In my comment, I said it's sad to say my favorite time is my 16-hour flight that I don't get Wi-Fi on. It's the only time I'm truly disconnected. Although, as you know, I live on a ranch, so on Saturdays and Sundays I have no phone or computer as I'm chainsawing. So there has to be a disconnection. There has to be back to the humanness, the elements of humanness that make us unique. So I think employers have to be intentional about that. The world we live in is about that 3x revenue, and we don't care about the hours, so I do worry. I think AI can provide everything we need to work 4-day week and produce the same output, or 3-day week. It's what we do. I had a great example on your ethical use as you were talking. It triggered my mind. Without sharing too many details, we employ a lot of software engineers around the world, and it came to our attention that there was a software engineer that was working for both my company and my competitor at the same time, delivering everything to spec, to quality, to schedule, because they're using AI. They had AI going to the Teams meetings, taking the transcript if they weren't able to make it, and it was 3 developers that were working for 10 companies full time at the same time. So not only can you do your job, you can do 2 jobs with AI. Now that's not ethical, but it's possible, and it happened to me, not my team, but my company. So there is a true ethical consideration of the power this gives you. As a software engineer, I can produce 10x. If I'm signing up to produce 1x, I can have 10 of those, and it's happening. So there's ethical considerations, the power we're giving to pretty much anything. Now that it's available as such a simple tool to use.
Great. I saw Dr. White's hand, and I was going to maybe let you ask your question, because I feel like you both were centering about humanists, right? The humanistic. I think we all know he's from the College of Aviation Science and Technology, but he is very much on board with this human element that we need that. So, your question.
Yeah, my question popped in my head when I was listening to your response to the opening prompt. And I think we're all familiar with the notion that the top employees do the majority of the work. And it almost is independent of company or sector. And when AI first came out, my thought was, in an ideal world, you could be used to level the playing field. Yet, you also said that your top employees who lean into this are the ones that you're keeping, and the other employees are dropping off. So I think it's complicated.
A nuance, the middle are falling out, the bottom actually are invigorated, and it does raise the level. So I think.
But also, somebody who comes from an underprivileged background may now have an opportunity to compete with
100%.
somebody who had all of the correct tutoring in, elite schools as they were growing up. And I was wondering what the mechanics of that opportunity or that potential future.
Sheila, not to call on you, but I think this might be a great question to start off, because she's our resident expert from trying to push it out curricular-wise at Lewis.
Some people like me, some people don't like me.
I like you.
And I just want to add that my chainsawing time when I'm offline is also very invigorating. So
Awesome.
I agree.
Use a steel or a Husqvarna or
Both, yeah, all
me
those
too.
things.
That's amazing. Yeah.
All those. But I think what we want to make sure we're guarding against, and I think because the cost of the technology is becoming so accessible, is that we're not creating these gaps of accessibility that are just perpetuating these patterns that you might be touching on a little bit, Chris. But we also were talking before at the session, just even for our students right now, some of our students in the room, because education, probably along with healthcare, along with government, is some of the industries, some of the sectors that might be a little bit more asleep at the wheel when it comes to AI, but I think a lot of them are starting to get into the testing mode, into evolving to bring it in. But the challenge is for students right now, they'll be sitting in one class where a professor says, now absolutely, no matter what, do not use any AI in this course, you're gonna fail. And then they go to their next course and the professor says, you have to use AI in every single assignment that you do. Or else failure. Hopefully no one is being failed for either reason. But nonetheless, there's a little bit of that that's also going on, in industry. So right now, there's just kind of this chaotic environment where everyone's not sure when should we be using this, when should we not be using this. And I think we're also trying to talk about literacy. So how do we bring AI literacy in at the right level so that everyone has that even playing field or foundation to start with? And right now, that's what I see both in educational institutions, but that's also what I see in organizations, that you can't have the individuals you're expecting to do this transformation not understand what it is that they're asked to be doing that with. And there is a lot of that, not understanding the most basics of what is this tool and then what is it capable of. Because it's not if we should use this. And you'll hear a lot about the build versus buy decisions, which you probably think about all the time in organizations. And I think it's not the question of what can AI do for us, but the organizations that are really getting ahead of this are, what is it that we need this to do? And that's how you determine what you're going to build versus what you're going to buy. But I think there's an opportunity to make sure that we're not widening that gap or perpetuating the gap.
Yeah, and to your point, the democratization is different this time. I think OpenAI has something like 700 million weekly users. That's a very different pattern than we've seen with other technologies. So I think there is the opportunity much more broadly around the world for people to leverage this. I think about, again, in a global role, the ability to go back and forth through languages. That's not been easy historically. Now it's easy to be more comfortable listening to this lecture in any other language automatically through AI. So the ability to get to more people to level the playing field. I do worry about the middle, and that's right. They don't want to change. So the top players, they get it. The ones coming up, we're up leveling them. I worry about the middle. We got to convince them so that we kind of move everyone along. And that's typically what we see in organizations. The middle layer, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm an expert. I don't need to change. They're the ones you have to convince the most. And that's where we focus a lot in our change and culture initiatives.
I just want to comment on that, Scott, because I think that's what concerns me most is, and this is really it's not an AI question, but you mentioned this morning, this is a people problem. It's not a technology problem. I think all three of you, just because I know a little bit about all of your work, it feels to me like corporations and, of course, universities need to help people to be curious and willing to change. And I don't know if you have any data, but you talked about, we're looking at, millions and millions and millions of jobs. Jobs aren't changing, but I do wonder whether people drop out and new people take those jobs. Meaning, the job is changing kind of how it's done, and the job's still called whatever, software engineer, whatever the name of the job is. But Ralph, who used to do that job, didn't adapt quickly enough for the organization, and now Susan's doing that job because Susan was willing to change. And it feels like a societal problem because there are a lot of people that are comfortable doing their job, and we've had throughout history Luddites who have broken machines because they don't want to have. It doesn't matter what the thing is. The new machine is going to change my life. I just want to go to work and do my thing. So could you, any three of you or all three of you, talk about, because the other thing that was many sobering things with what you said this morning, but the pace of change. We want to do this responsibly, but going back to Sheila's point, the content really doesn't matter anymore. I mean, you have to learn certain things. But if 4 years from now, literally what I've learned is going to be obsolete, then is a 4-year degree appropriate? What does it need to do for me? Does it need to help them to learn how to change? Not learn a content. And I guess I'm interested in some thoughts on people change, because what you're really talking about is helping people be open to change. I know there's a lot.
Always the easy questions.
I know.
Thanks. I think you mentioned it. That we have to get people more curious, and the world is. We can ignore it. That's why I show some of the crazier videos. So if you're not paying attention, you may think it's just science fiction and we don't have to worry about it, because the human problem is we do get comfortable and we want to do the same thing because it's easy. That's back to the comment that the top performers actually make the most impact and carry the rest of the organization in most places, because they want that comfort. That, to me, that's that human problem. And with the pace of change today, I don't think we have that ability anymore. That's my own personal perspective. So to your first point, the person that doesn't want to make the change being replaced by the person that has leaned in and accepted. I give the example of accountants that used Excel replaced accountants that would only use a 10 key. That happened. Period. My accountant still wants to use a 10 key. It takes him 10 times as long. So it is going to happen that way. The difference here is it's pervasive. This new era of AI, again, I challenge anyone to tell me a role, a sector, a function that can't be helped by AI. I have yet to be stumped. Maybe there's one out there. But that's happening and we can ignore it, or we can lean in and help those people see that it's happening and how it can benefit them. And that's kind of our approach. You said the literacy. We have to create base literacy. Before AI was something the nerds did, now AI is everywhere. You have to be at a certain level. You have to understand, you have to have that literacy. So we have to lean in. That's an effort we have to take, whether it's in higher education or in corporate America. In my firm in January of 2023, we made the announcement of $1 billion investment and that we were bringing every single person along. It was an opt-out, not an opt-in. And that's a very specific term. You can opt out. You can be the person that wants to use the 10 key. But at some point, that we're not the firm for you. We want everyone to come along. Whether you're a tax specialist associate or a strategy partner, all of you are going to get the training you need, and it's different based on what you do. So I think we have to be intentional, and I think higher education has to take that into account. What you learn is still important, and how you learned it is more important now. So I have infinite intelligence. But how I use it matters, and how I get to that intelligence matters. And that's what you learn in school, is how to learn. So we have to adapt how we teach you to learn. And I think that's where we're in this world of, we can have individual courses almost, so that I learn how I learn. I'm like, be bright, be brief, be gone. I want to learn fast. Other people want to take their time. It's hard to do that in a classroom today. You have to go to the meeting. So I think AI gives us all these opportunities to learn differently. I don't think learning it now is irrelevant in 4 years, because that process to get there is worthwhile. But you guys are the experts.
Well, it opens up that opportunity for personalization.
Yes.
Is probably the word I would use. That just, we didn't have the capacity or the capability as one human being in front of a classroom, no matter how many people, to get to that level of personalization that AI can now invite for us. But I think there's so many things that came up for me as you were saying that. One, and I don't mean to keep picking on higher ed, but here we all are. And if we think about it, it's not even just about individual literacy, it truly is about institutional literacy. Because now it's, can we as faculty, as an institution, be learning as fast as our students are already learning AI? So just how that has flipped. And so then what does it mean if you have all of this wisdom right there in your pocket, or information, knowledge in your pocket? It's not about me giving the content or the answers. It's more about me helping to direct to what's the right question. So it's a complete role reversal of what my role is and the role that I serve. And it's a mindset shift in thinking about that too.
The same executive leadership is the same. You have to lead differently. It's the same problem.
From my standpoint, I only being a professor for about 6 years now, what I try to do is in the classroom, I want my students to know every tool out there that's relevant to the topic of the class, right? In the beginning of the semester, most of my students only know about ChatGPT or just about Claude, right? They don't know about the thousands of platforms out there that are relevant to their marketing class, to their entrepreneurship class, to their sales class, right? They're not aware of those. And so one big thing that I think we need to do as universities, as we're educating students, as we bring people in the real world, is tie the different tools to what you're looking to do, to what your role is. For example, in my entrepreneurship class, they have to use Sora to make a commercial. They have to use Lovable to make a website. In the sales class, they need to know what Salesforce's Agent Force does, right? I think we need to start bringing AI in not just as a answer this question, help you write this better, help you make this deck, but very specific to what the core of the class is. Because there are specific tools that will help each of those roles in their career if we can start tying it that way.
I think the only thing I'd add, going back to your question, Dave, is about what does it take now if it's so different coming into a 4-year degree or any learning experience, time bound. I think we've constantly been shifting away from not just horizontal learning of skills and capabilities and knowledge, but moving toward vertical development, which we've already been asked to do this. It's something that's been pushing up for some time. But I think the call is even greater now when it's not about the specific knowledge, but it really is about how do we increase from like a adult development, human development, leadership development perspective, not just your capability, but your capacity, your ability to navigate complex situations, your ability to navigate change with resilience. And how do you do that? I mean, it's through the 3 ingredients of vertical development are sense making, so pause for reflection, which is one of the things that potentially could be at stake when it comes to AI and things coming so quickly. But pause, reflect. It's also about colliding perspectives, which higher education should be the catalyst for opportunities to be engaged with lots of different viewpoints and ways of looking at the world. And then heat experiences. Maybe an example of one of the most traditional ways you could do that is by living abroad. Not going on vacation for a week, but really immersing yourself abroad in a different culture. These are 3 things that higher education already is doing, and we just need to step up and do more of.
Great insights thus far. I just maybe the next question might go into like diversity of thought, because I think one of the things that universities have done extremely well over the centuries, especially in the US, is that we welcome diversity of thought, and I think that enriches the experience. But how do we, I guess with the advent of AI now, and knowing that faculty sometimes might be slower to change, and we talked earlier today, maybe last night, a little bit about to become really good at AI, you've got to be like a piano player. You don't get good at piano unless you practice every day. And so how do we encourage faculty to kind of embrace this? Because I think that's the first challenge for us, is to get the faculty on board. Because I think employers, from what I hear and what I've seen, and we talked earlier that I met the president of SHRM 2 weeks ago, and he said, for the global SHRM, and he said, employers are telling him now that I hire you as a company, for the company, and I want you to do a project, and if it takes you longer than 2 hours, I will fire you and hire the next person who can do it in 2 hours because I know AI does that. So how do we get like faculty on board? Because that's a big struggle. And then how do we maybe integrate it into curriculum? Because I think we're trying to prepare a workforce. Wasn't that hard?
I mean, I think it's about just inspiring, encouraging everyone around us, because I think some of the most innovative ideas of how you get, because it's not just unique to faculty, even in these like middle level that we've been talking about where maybe they're a little bit more resistant. I think there's different things you can do to inspire and encourage, but I think it does reach a threshold where talking about it is no longer going to fix it. Like you just have to get in there and do it to see what it's capable of. You have to make the mistakes, because then that helps you learn just as much as when you like have that home run of something that works really, really well. Even just when in organizations I've hosted like small hackathons almost, and the individuals that are there have just that baseline information about what AI is, but spending 3 hours with the team where they come up with these amazing, cool things that they hadn't even thought of 3 hours before that, suddenly it just unlocks for them what this technology is capable of. I mean, my twin sister is one of these people we're talking about. She's not here, so don't tell her that I'm saying this. But I showed her that I now no longer have to go grocery shopping. An AI agent goes into my recipes, creates my meal plan every single week. It takes the meal plan recipes, and then it creates a grocery list. It takes the grocery list and it puts it into Instacart. It hits order, and then it gets delivered to my door. And then I have to ask my husband to put it away, which is a little bit of a pain, but other than that.
There's going to be a robot for that.
We're going to get the Neo, $500 a month.
So I can't speak to faculty, right? So I work in the enterprise. And to your point, I say you have to bring it to life in context, which is what you're saying. And I gave us, I think, an example at dinner. This is probably more difficult than faculty. In April of 2023, this was very early days of ChatGPT, and it was 3.5, which was actually, looking back, a horrible model, the first release. I was standing in front of 30 reinsurance CEOs. Does anyone know what reinsurance is? Yeah, so as boring as insurance is, reinsurance is twice as boring. And I was trying to explain to them, this is the best thing ever. And I could just tell they didn't believe me. So I went off script and I said, all right, we're gonna do this live. What do you do in reinsurance? Someone explained it, and they create a reinsurance treaty. It's basically a contract. I said, all right, we're gonna create one live. And I created a reinsurance treaty with ChatGPT live. And the room was pretty much silent, because that takes them a year usually with a big team. And I just did it in a few minutes. But then there was one person that raised their hand and said, you missed one clause. And I said, great. And I made that clause. It became in context. So when that finished, every single one of them wanted to talk about, now they got it. AI is such a general purpose tool, and it's a general concept. It's like saying the word digital. Who can define what that means anymore? 10 years ago, we had to do the same thing around digital, which meant a lot of things to a lot of people. So I think bringing it in context. So for faculty, showing them that, getting that light bulb moment where it's going to help them. It's going to do something that they didn't want to do anyway. And then it's your point. Then it's daily practice. And a lot of the advice I give to executives is use it in your daily life. I love this example. Have it order your groceries and create a meal plan. You don't want to do that anyway. Once you start to use it in your personal life, and it's saving you time, and I use it all the time in my personal life. In fact, most of my ChatGPT is non-work related. Then you start to have these moments at work that it becomes more real. And you have to focus on that. When I said we kicked off in January of 23, we had a fantastic plan of training. And then 6 months later, we realized, okay, we got to update it. And 3 months later, we had to update it again. This is not a once and done. Learning the piano, you can't just play one song. You won't be a good piano player. So it's use it in your personal life, bring it to life in context of what they're doing day to day. If they're teaching art or English or math or computer science or aviation, it has to be relevant to that. And AI can solve any of those, but it has to be constructed in a way that's going to be that moment. Another question.
No, you can go.
First chair. So.
I'm going to ask something about this business. So, if the pace of innovation is going to increase exponentially, what does that mean about the size of companies? Because historically, somebody will create innovation, a company will explode, they will be able to dominate position in the marketplace and stay there for a very long time. But if AI allows innovation literally within 3 days, does that mean that we're going to have only large companies who can afford to do this, or are there going to be lots and lots of small companies that are popping up, are relevant for a year, and then replaced by somebody else who out-innovates that using these tools?
I did not make predictions. I told you that this morning. It's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer. I can tell you, as we look reflectively in our business, we serve the Fortune 500, but probably not beyond that, because the companies get too small to actually work with. Well, I see a world where I can serve small and medium businesses because of AI. So we're not going to get smaller. We may get bigger because of AI. Because we have 18,000 clients in the US or something. Let's have 50,000. But that maybe big companies get bigger. At the same time, you're seeing founders, one person or 3 people coming together and building something unique that are taking a whole market. So I don't know how it's going to end up. And the traditional economy would say they'll get bought out by the big tech company maybe, but there's a great example of a company in the UK that I've been close to, Synthesia. They create the avatars. They're one of the first unicorns. They just refused an offer from Adobe. They said, no, we're going to do this. And it was literally a the founder and I, he shared a picture. There was 6 people around the table that created that company 5 or 6 years ago. So it's a new world. I don't exactly know how it's going to go. I think we're going to see great successes like this. DJ will not sell out for the money. And they'll continue to lead in that area. It's a new area that didn't exist, by the way. That's a new job. Avatar development didn't exist 5 years ago. They're making a lot of money out of it. 3 years ago they were making nothing. So a new job right there. They're not going big tech. I think it can go a lot of ways.
I think it's, again, don't know the future, right? I think it's similar to how we kind of discussed employees, right? There's the ones that are going to embrace it, there's the ones that are going to run from it, and there's this group that's, going to shift. And I think what's going to really change is, yes, bigger companies will get bigger, but I think similar to giving someone new to their career the ability to really outperform, really do very well even earlier in their career, we're giving the ability to small companies, like you said, small people, small groups of people to run really big companies with less. I'm sure you've seen the article, was it 3 22-year-olds? They're the quickest billionaires ever.
Oh, yeah.
They were bagging groceries 9 months ago.
Yeah.
And now they're billionaires because they built a 3-person AI company, right? Are they going to sell it? I don't know what they're going to do with it, but we're giving that power to more people now, regardless of where you're from, regardless of your background. And so I think it's just going to be a more even balance of big and small companies. It's not just going to be Fang or Mango, right, where it's just these big groups. We're going to have smaller companies that are just as successful, well, maybe not just as successful, but successful enough to where we just have a broader range now. There's more places to go.
When you think about the power of the democratization, for $20 a month, ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whichever one you want, a small business now has a full marketing team, can generate videos for free, email campaigns. You couldn't do that before. So now you could grow a small business. It's unbelievable.
The entrepreneurs that you're creating right in your course, they're lovable, vibe coding their websites. Yeah.
And I think just to add on to this, and I think about the big companies and small companies, but I think of like when you talk about companies now can create videos, like our recent hire with Director of Innovation Hub, Avi, in about 30 minutes created a Lewis video, and it blew me away. All AI generated and the best video I've ever seen, right? So I guess my question back to that is this democratization, it's going to reach out to emerging economies, right? And that's where there's a lot more money, a lot more opportunity. So I guess how do we ethically, the haves, the first world, kind of leverage the AI resources and kind of lift those people up, because essentially we could maybe lift up the entire world with AI. I mean, it lowers the barriers for education, it lowers the barriers to wealth. I know someone at lunch today asked you about, can they use AI to play the stock market? I've been looking at that myself. So I guess how do you see that really opening up doors to the emerging economies? Because there's a lot more people there than there are in our first world.
So one of the aspects that the US has to get better at is the thought of open sourcing this technology. So we're still pretty close source, it's still pretty isolated in 5 or 6 big models and big tech companies. China's actually very far ahead of us on this. And this is not China's typical pattern, but they've open sourced all of their technology, which then helps that democratization. Now, that may be why they're doing it. Let's not get into their strategy, but we're seeing it more and more. And again, different than other technology patterns, the money from the top, the trillions from the big tech is happening, but I've never seen more open source community than I have in AI. Hugging Face, the amount of models and now open data sets, which is actually more important. They have the most open data sets we've ever seen. So it's happening almost organically because there's this pull from, we're very privileged in the US, we have all these tech vendors. The rest of the world doesn't. I work in the EU, they have a lot of challenge because of their regulation. But Asia Pacific is thriving. Japan and Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, it's pretty unbelievable. So I think it's happening almost naturally because people see the opportunity. I think we have to get better at the sharing of this kind of as a platform, and then the uniqueness that you put into it is your data and your process, your people. That's where you set yourself apart. But I think some of it's happening in a good way. We need to do more of it, I think, from the US perspective. But the money will drive that. I mean, there's so much happening at the top. It's going to be tough to open source everything.
Wait, there's a question. Bobby?
I'll say, you spent a significant time in China where using AI development through the open source, and particularly to see that excelling Chinese is right now goes over the back. Do you think the Chinese approach to scaling AI will eventually surpass American innovation levels and still have that? Obviously, Texas is in China, so that kind of helps them stay cut to par.
So I spent 5 years living in China, so by no means an expert. I think there's a cultural aspect. China is very good at scaling. They're not as good at innovation, although they innovate, but we've been ahead in innovation. Most of the things you see in China started here, and then they've taken it to scale. So it's two different patterns. There's a lot in the political side and the economic side we'll get into, but no, I don't think we're going to be outdated. I have faith in the American spirit, and I think we're seeing it more and more. I look to some of these big tech companies where Google's open sourcing and Microsoft's working with Microsoft, and they're working with Amazon, and they're working with Anthropic. That's never happened before. And that's because the pace is so fast, they have to have an ecosystem. So I don't think we'll be out innovated. The question is, can we get the scale that we need? And your point around robotics, China's probably 10 years ahead. But I just saw on the way over here, another breakthrough in space. We're winning the space in space. The amount of development happening in space, I think that's the next frontier. So if we get manufacturing right, if we scale, we're unbeatable. But that's hard. But there's focus on it now. There's money being invested. I think if we get energy right, we can get manufacturing right, and we can get scaling right. So will that happen or not? Everything can change in 3 years. I don't know. Our pattern is 4-year pattern. They think in 5 and 30-year patterns. That's a very different mindset. They have a 5-year plan and a 30-year plan that overlap. That's just a different way to think about building. They're thinking 1,000 years ahead of us. But in innovation, we're still the leader. I think we'll stay there if we can get past the politics, if we can do more open source, if we can do the right investments. If we do energy right, I think everything else falls in place. That's a personal perspective, not PwC endorsed for the camera.
Go ahead.
I'll ask questions all night long, but actually, Jim and I has so I asked Jim and I would have a question, of course.
You can always ask a question.
So, Jim, I would like to know. We often hear the rhetoric that AI should augment, not replace, but given the immense pressure on corporate efficiency and the rapidly emerging capabilities of AI agents, and this question is specific to use economy, is the vision of human augmentation merely a transitional fantasy? At what point would PwC recommend to its clients that they stop investing in upscale and instead they look directly to full AI-driven workforce replacements for non-strategic goals?
Remember, this is recorded.
I think absolutely jobs will be replaced, certain jobs. As I said over the years, many jobs will be replaced. In regulated industries, augmentation is there by regulation. So until regulation changes, there's no possibility of replacing humans. I also don't think AI can replace humans across the board. So I think things we didn't want to do anyway, we should replace those roles and move those people to higher value, more revenue-based. Efficiencies are hard to capture, but over time, there will be more and more agent-based replacement of skills. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, anyone use a 10-keyword calculator day to day? No way. We've replaced that skill. The jobs didn't go away. We still need accountants. We still need tax advisors. We still need to think about strategies. AI will be augmenting those things. So I don't see a human replacement. I don't see PwC ever recommending that. But I think certain jobs absolutely will go away.
Could I just add on to that, just a note, and I'm not sure of this exact number, but I think it was over 50% of people in the mid-1800s worked in agriculture.
I think it was 90%.
and then now it's 1%.
That's right.
So I think, but we get more food.
We eat more than
actually-
we should. We have
get
too much.
way more food out of that 1%.
Correct.
So I do think that part of the, this has been asked, but, and I guess I'm interested in maybe the three people talking about this. I keep going back to when I talk to people about this. Humanness is the most important thing that we should be focused on. Like, we need to help people to be more human, because being human is going to be the thing that is most valuable to a company if they want to hire a human. Because if they want to hire an algorithm, there are much better algorithms. So let's not try to be algorithms, which we've tried to do, right? Coding, et cetera, et cetera. So it feels to me like, in some sense, and I guess I'm interested in this, like, it feels to me like reading Shakespeare is more important than learning accounting. Now, I know if you want to be an accountant, you have to know accounting. But dealing with people feels more valuable because the algorithms will deal with things that algorithms can do. So I am just interested in people's thought, and I use Shakespeare just as one example. But my point is, studying human nature seems more valuable than studying algorithms. Somebody's got to audit the algorithms, of course, but algorithms will audit algorithms in the future as well.
Correct.
Right. So, could somebody, just some sense, because I think when you think curricularly, and I love what you said this morning, I just want to repeat it because not everybody was there, but a school in which individualized stuff happens for 2 hours and then people go and I'm not going to
Be
change
people
lots
together.
right, but
Fix a bicycle.
solve problems together,
Solve
solve
problems
real
together.
things together.
Yes.
Feels really, really valuable. This goes to Sheila's point of we should have more people studying abroad and then coming back and coming together. We should have more people flying planes if they're going to fly planes and being in ORs if they're going to be in ORs. All of that kind of experiential learning. But Sheila also said earlier, it changes the role of a faculty in a really, really significant way. Curating experiences versus being the font of knowledge, right? But it feels like we still need to understand the people better. Because that's going to be our best play, I think, in the economy of 2050, right? I mean, if we don't know how to deal with people, because it's a people problem, and we think we're going to solve the algorithmic problem overnight.
I agree with all of that. And you think about IQ versus EQ. IQ's being, I feel like we can have AI with IQ, but never with EQ. There's that human element. And the example of that school, it's all about getting those kids in all the grades together and problem solving, which what they're doing is learning to be human.
Right.
And work with humans. And one of the things I love the way you said this, we can't be algorithms. That's not how our brain works. And in fact, a lot of the things I mentioned this morning is we're starting to make computers that are much more biological because there's a limit to the 0 and 1 architecture. It's just algorithms. Now, if we get that breakthrough on the neuromorphic, then I might be more worried. But the human element is so important. So I love the way you kind of teed that up, and I agree with that. And the more you learn with other people, you have intelligence at your fingertips already. We already have more than we'll ever need in our lifetimes right now in the models. That's how you apply that into the real world. And robots, the embodied robots, they're not going to provide that. They're going to be algorithmic.
I think there's going to be and there might already be, a tipping point between not just valuing someone who can automate everything. There's value to be able to architect an ecosystem of automation. But the true power skill is going to be knowing when not to automate. And there's a part of that just aligns with this humanness. When do we need to make sure we're elevating, celebrating, making sure that we're keeping the humanness?
You might see a new renaissance, right?
That's what I
Personally,
That's my personal.
if I buy art, I only want human-made art.
Right.
Even though AI art can be great, I'm not going to buy it. It's not going to be creative.
And if we have a ton more artists in 20 years, I applaud.
So critical thinking, philosophy, theology, these are things that formulate the basis to work with AI better. Those are the human things.
Okay.
So
You hear that?
the rock star.
No.
So when you talk about, as you had mentioned about, making people do travel and go do things like that, right? It brings me back to the question about how do we drive the faculty forward to actually accept AI, right? The way I look at it is the more we accept leveraging AI as faculty for the things that might take up time, that might not have to be done naturally or manually, we should focus on driving these types of projects, driving these types of activities where people have to work together, build that human element instead of answers or quizzes or midterms, right? They're still valuable, they're still important, but how do we spend that time we save as faculty by leveraging AI to start driving more personalized and active and like kind of real world things where they have to work together without AI? One of the projects I've seen at university do before that I want to do next semester is you give students a bunch of paper clips. You say you got a week, and you can see who can make this paper clip the most valuable over the next week. Can't use it after that. You have to get out there. You have to talk to people. You have to meet with people. You have to sell. You have to negotiate, right? And so, how do we use the time we're saving as faculty to really drive this personal skill set that people are going to need, the EQ, outside of just the answers from AI?
So I'm interested in your thought on some of the human value is an expertise. But if everyone has expertise at their fingers, but you don't really know if it's accurate, right? And if you kind of get to that level of expertise where you can spot things and say, that's not really it, you can throw it out because you've worked through that, right? People have been in careers a while, have learned those experiences. What's your thought on how to balance that, right? How do you know if it's right or wrong if you haven't had the experience to get to that perspective and that point of view?
Stacy's a plant, she works at PwC. It's not fair.
It's a challenge,
This is a
right?
huge challenge, and whether you look at accounting or software engineering, you have a great equivalent. Today, we train through brute force. You come into the firm, and you're doing taxes. You're going to work 20 hours a day before tax day, and you're going to learn how to apply everything you learn in that 4 years of college. But you're going to learn not the concept of accounting, but the reality of accounting, brute force. Well, now, if AI can actually do it all, how do you learn? So how do you become that expert?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer yet. So we're trying different things. I think we can do some synthetic learning with an AI that puts you through that 20-hour day. I don't know. I worry about this. You hollow out the foundational skills. And that's where I think higher education has a place to play, that you build those foundational skills of how to have critical thinking, how to ask the right questions, how to interact with humans and synthetics. That's kind of a new thing, but we're going to have to interact with humans and synthetics. So that the training curriculum has to change in corporate America. And I think higher education can set them up in a way that you're building that foundation the right way so you have the basics. And then how you learn it's going to be different. It's not going to be the associate to senior associate. Okay, you don't do the 20-hour days anymore. You're going to manage the 20-hour day of people. And as you get to partner, you work 1-hour days. Wait a minute. No, that's not how it is. I'm working 20-hour days. It flipped. But I don't know the answer yet. So there's some techniques we're trying. But I think we have to learn a new way to teach people on the job. And that's where universities could put more of that in early, I think, back to those projects and put them out to trade that paperclip up to a Lotus car. Like there was one great example, a guy took a paperclip all the way up to a house. Like, that's impressive. And then you get whatever's at that. Nice. Yeah, that's nice.
I didn't read about that part when I heard about that.
I was just going to comment because I think this is faculty that I talk to in the university context, and this is not just our faculty, but faculty around the country. This is their fundamental question, right? So they want to say there's no way to know whether AI does accounting well. There's no way to know whether AI writes well.
That's not true.
If you don't know how to write, right? So that's their concern, right? So the people that are saying, I don't want AI, are saying, nobody can judge whether it's good writing. Human can't judge whether it's good writing if they don't know how to write. And if they always have an AI writing for them, they're never going to learn how to write, right? Like you can't have AI learn how to ride a bicycle for you if you've never ridden a bicycle. You can't help your daughter learn how to ride a bicycle if you've never learned how to ride a bicycle. How do you balance and all that, right? So there's lots of I think that for me is higher ed's, for the next 20 years, it's higher ed's key question. Can you learn what you need to learn? Not be able to use the tool, but learn how to judge the tool. If in fact we want humans to judge the tool. I'm not sure we do, that's why I would go back to the human side. But if we want humans to judge the tool, they need to know the process. And the only way to learn the process is actually learning it. And as a theologian, I believe in virtue's advice is so SWOT is very important because we will try to get around that learning because learning is hard. If you ever tried to learn a language, or learn how to play the guitar, right? You can't do without doing it. And it hurts the end of your fingers, and it's embarrassing when you speak the language and you sound like a third grader, right? All those things are hard, but you literally can't get to the other side and judge it until you've gone through the gauntlet. We have to figure out, and maybe every company has to figure out, how to do learning and not have people skip over the learning process. And I think this is incredibly difficult. It's the question that keeps me up at night, literally. Your question is what keeps me up at night as a leader of higher education.
What I think Malcolm Gladwell said, it's 10,000 hours minimum to become that expert. That's a lot of hours. So while I'm chainsawing, I think about weird things. And so along the lines of the bicycle, the baby born today likely will never learn to drive. Well, we'll have automated cars, it doesn't matter, right? Everything's good. When you're learning to drive, it's not about learning to drive. You're learning risk assessment. You're judging speed. You're judging danger.
That's where I learned all the bad words I didn't know that my dad.
You're learning to swear.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
You learn a
remember
lot.
my mom, who was at the session this morning, she used to make me drive the conversion van, which is like this old school massive van, because it was the hardest thing. Go through the drive-through. Don't hit anything. It wasn't about driving. It's not about driving. You're learning all of these other things that you're using throughout your life by driving. Well, now you're not going to learn to drive. How are you going to learn risk assessment, speed, judgment, distance, all of velocity, all of these things? I don't know why I think about weird stuff like that, but
I think that's right. Actually, being one of 6 kids, I learned to drive on a previously owned 17-passenger airport transportation vehicle.
there you go. And you're probably a good driver now.
Well,
You want to make announcements all the time.
it depends, yeah. We won't go that far. But I think the question that keeps you up at night, it does kind of keep me up at night too. But I know sometimes I get accused of being like too much of an AI champion, but there's such a balance there because I'm also a complete champion of human potential. I am both. And when I think about what keeps me up at night is a variation or a version of this of, will anyone ever want to begin something? Like, will anyone ever want to pivot or shift or learn something new when in order to get to a point of capability or competency, you have to get to such a higher level than maybe you would a few years ago because AI can already do that. I mean, even as an executive coach, in coaching, there's levels of competency that are measured, your skill level. I've done this to myself. I've context engineered a bot that passed a blind study there's 3 levels, the first level, second level, and the third level. It has passed at the first level, no problem. And it's reaching up and it is touching the second level. I mean, part of me is like, that is so cool before I want to start crying and be like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? But I think what it does invite, and I don't have the answer, but how I think about this is more apprenticeships, more of those opportunities for truly helping someone to evolve the skill as a catalyst, maybe accelerate it. And I think what we're going to see in the places where this can support is the simulated type of learning, immersive types of learning that are going to come with the technologies of VR and AR and things like that. I think there's a lot of possibility that we just haven't seen yet.
So maybe this is the wrong way for me to look at it, but so for me, that doesn't necessarily scare me about it. For example, never driving. I've got an 11-year-old. She'll probably learn to drive. My 4-year-old, never. He will never have a driver's license. But again, though, what do we replace that with, right? So, will my son never know how to look both ways or pay attention to crosswalks and stuff like that? Will there be other things that come up, more individual things, more personal things, more activities that we will still learn those skills, but because we now have more time or more options, we're learning it in a different way. Right, I always look at Google, right? How many people in here could figure out the Dewey Decimal System? Anyone? Okay, so 5, right? When I was in grade school and high school, I knew that thing, right? My students don't know what it is because they don't have to.
What?
Right, the Dewey Decimal System, but they know how to find information, right? They know how to find a book, they know how to read. It didn't make them lose the ability to actually bring in that information and knowledge. It just became a different way of doing it because it opens up to a faster, more resourceful way of doing it. So it doesn't scare me necessarily, but again, I'm the one that's like, yes, come on, 1 day work week, like, you know, just I'm gonna come meet you down in Austin and
Come
have
on,
a chainsaw all day,
Yeah.
play with your goats. But it doesn't scare me as much because I just think that we are gonna find other ways to still get those skills or be able to focus more on it, right? Do we necessarily not want to put the 10,000 hours into guitar because it's hard? Yeah, I've bought about 7 guitars and I've sold them all after about 3 weeks, so I get it. But is it because I don't have that freedom and that time to do it either, to actually concentrate on it? And if this allowed me to not focus on the other things I have to focus on, automate, make life a little more relaxed, would I be able to do it? Still probably not, but maybe.
And go here in front.
So I started my AI journey with ChatGPT. I don't know unless they release a new version. So I see like learning AI is like running marathons and everything because I see a lot of them like building my stuff and all. I use different AIs and I a lot of people I use it for my portfolio website and all, which is really because I built my own website in 2 hours with my background being a mechanical engineer, MBA. Nothing is really clear to something. I just gave an input. It's impressive that made me to having more learning, more exploring the AI tools. But I want you to talk on this like am I the only one feeling that if I keep it away like a week, I feel outdated? I'm 100% genuine to this because the new tools, new version, I mean, OpenAI, ChatGPT is releasing every new version like 3 months, couple of months, right? So am I the only one who's feeling that? I just want to be alone in the room, like someone walking up to me, hey, dude, you know this application or AI, you know, XYZ and all, which all is like in the room. So I want to talk on that.
I always say I'm exhausted trying to keep up. You mentioned there's thousands of tools. We have a weekly process to ingest new AI tools because they have to go through a rigorous security assessment and then we decide whether or not it's worth it and what we're going to drop off the tool list. Hopefully that calms down. I'm not sure it will. It's a little exhausting, but there's no way to keep up with everything. So I think you have to focus in the areas that are going to have the most impact for you. And ironically, because of that, the skill you need is to actually understand some business in depth so that you can get to the right tool. Your comment was right. The general purpose tools are general purpose.
Adding up to that, if you learn a bicycle in real life, any man can go and ride a bicycle if you learn that, right? This AI is a different for people.
It's getting close though. I mean, I'm a bit sick of chatbots personally. I don't want another chatbot. I'm telling my team, stop building chatbots, move the next step. So we'll see what comes next. But I don't need any more chatbots. That's not AI typically. It's very basic.
We'll do one more question, and I'm watching the time because I think there's classes at 6, and so I don't want anyone.
Let's cancel them.
I can't do that.
I'm kidding.
They're paying tuition, so Javi.
Yeah, so Dr. Williams talked about the farming that kind of job like that. We was at a venture summit 2 weeks ago, and we saw that they're starting to integrate autonomous farming. Pointed out 90% of farmers now
1%, I wanted to ask, do you think these advances can fundamentally change our food supply chain and can ever get to a more localized AI-driven agricultural economy where food is constantly made so that essentially we create world hunger?
I have a perspective. AI is not the problem. Soil's the problem, water's the problem, the supply chain's the problem, tariffs may be the problem. Like, there's so many other problems that are non-AI related. It may help fix those. I actually think, ironically, so I live in Texas, there's a supermarket, HEB, it's the number one supermarket in America, but it's only in Texas. They source everything from Texas. They ship everything in Texas, and they have it's the best grocery store I've ever seen in my life. So there's this movement towards localized food supply. No Publix, forget about it. No way. HEB all day. But back to the Renaissance, like, I think people want that. You know, they want their meat or their vegetables or their milk coming from local sources. But we've got to fix how we grow food. We've industrialized it, so we went too far. So there's only 1% farming because it's industrialized, which is killing the soil, and we're using chemical. There's a whole domino effect that we have to go back to the first principles of growing food. So I think we solved that. AI can help in some areas, but not all of them. But I think there is, at least in Texas, a renaissance of localized food and organic and single ingredient. You know, I raise cows. Like, I might have to eat one day. I'm okay with that. I know what it ate. I know where it lived. But I think there's lots more problems that AI can't solve around that, unfortunately.
All right, we'll do one more question, and then we'll have a final question that we'll go back to.
So we know that AI is a big data, we store that data in servers, on data centers. In order to set things up, it's run somewhere, and they need energy, electricity. In order to be successful, you have to more stuff, you're going to have to do these data centers to after you're not safe. So where do you get the power? Environment, where will be the impact because of us playing with things right here? Because they're running on a data center, and somebody has to supply energy that we don't have. So, for the environment, more productivity, and more assistance, and more development, with the ethical function. How do we look at it? We must have perspective, west, the east, and our standard controls that we just destroyed. So
Happy to jump in. You're going to love this. So we've been studying this intently at PwC. We've published a few studies. And it actually goes back to blockchain. I really love this part. We did an intense study of blockchain because this was the issue with Bitcoin. It was using as much energy as Argentina, the water, etc. The reality is, if you actually start to measure and truly understand both the energy and the water consumption, blockchain is actually exponentially more efficient than the current financial system that's also running in those centers. So it's actually not great. So the new blockchains today are highly efficient. Now, in the world of AI, we've studied this also. We've published an open source way to actually monitor and look at this. So I think one thing that's happening, maybe more in the West, to your point, than the East, we can talk about the difference, but the innovation around energy, because of the demand for AI, because of the trillions invested, we're seeing amazing innovation in energy production. So we're seeing small modular reactors coming online. We're seeing large reactors being built for the first time in 50 years. So the production of energy, green energy, investments in solar and wind, the biggest data center in the world being built in Texas, solar, wind, nuclear, gas, highly efficient. We're seeing the chips be redesigned. So Amazon has chips that are 40, 50, 60% more energy efficient. So there's innovation happening for those data centers. So data centers currently use, some will say 1.5, some will say 3% of global energy. The innovation just for that 3% affects 97% of energy usage by other industries who don't care as much. So I think the innovation inherently, we've done what's called a systems dynamics model, so a predictive model over the next 10 years. And because of the innovation for AI, we actually think we're going to be a net positive on energy production from a sustainability perspective, because we're doing it better because it's more profitable. And this is the Bitcoin story. I think it's near 70% of Bitcoin is mined in green energy, so zero carbon. 70%. It's the highest of any industry. Chemical industry, the transportation, none of them are at that percentage because it's more profitable. So the market fixed itself within a few years. So I have a glass half full perspective on this, that the innovation for that 5% is also going to help the 95% who are not pushing the innovation. So we might be in a better place because of AI, because of the demand. In the short term, there's no doubt we're building massive data centers that take, more importantly, the water than the energy, to be honest, especially in Texas. But I have a very positive hope that we do this right, and it solves it for all the industries, not just for AI data centers. And the other part, now we're going to space. So if you've seen recently, a lot of the projections are we're going to put data centers in space, which is already very cold, and so that no carbon impact to the globe, et cetera. So that's the next wave that we're watching.
All right,
We're over time.
we are out
Get
of
to
time,
class.
but before you go to class, I think what we'd like to do, a couple of things, is just say thank you for the panel, because I think there was some really great insights, and also thanks for the guests with the questions. But I think just to wrap it up, maybe in like 1 minute or less from each of you, starting at James and working backwards here, is, since this is the Father's Peace endowed lecture on contemporary ethics, what's the largest ethical trade-off do you think we're going to face as businesses in the world, emerging leaders? Because all of these folks here are either leaders currently or becoming emerging leaders. What's the biggest ethical trade-off with embracing AI in their company, in their roles? And then we'll end with Scott's final words.
My biggest concern is people lose the ability to be people. I interview a lot of people for sales roles, and I can tell you when someone is reading off a screen when I ask them a question, when a resume is built by AI, when they aren't even themselves, I can't get their personality out of them because they just rely on it too much. And so I think the biggest issue is going to be, or the biggest dilemma is going to be, how do we not allow ourselves to take the sloth route, right? The easy route. How do we keep ourselves honest, keep ourselves respecting ourselves, our personality, our unique individuality, and not just focus on AI? Because I struggle with it on a regular basis at my job. Again, tons of resumes come in, tons of interviews, and some people just don't care to even be themselves. They hide behind the AI. So I think that's one of the bigger things. So as a leader and as you go into your career, please don't lose sight of yourself. Be yourself. Make sure that you show everything that makes you amazing, and don't just hide behind a prompt.
Yeah, I love that. And I do think I was in conversations about AI all the time, but I still will hear a lot come up around hallucinations and inaccurate information. And I think, transparency is basically the new UX when it comes to AI, where that's just an expectation that it's going to be, sources are cited, we're moving toward talking about confidence levels and things like that. So that's never where my mind goes initially when I think about this question, but maybe similar to what James shared, it's that not losing that important part of being human, which is to pause and to reflect. And I think because of the speed of how quick we can receive things, create things, produce things, and produce great things. But even when I'm in a workflow of something that is super cool that I just created, when I pause for a second, sometimes I get a little bit frightened at how little of that I have now actually integrated into who I am moving forward. Sometimes that's okay, but that shouldn't just be the default. There has to be intention. So it's just remembering to keep that intention around the pause and the reflect.
I'll say, I think the biggest ethical decision for business leaders is whether they're just going to focus on the bottom line or if they're going to focus on bringing their people along the journey. So you could be an apex innovator without losing sight of the core, which is the people in your business that make it come to life.
Great, thank you. So for those that have class, you guys can do that, but we will be here to have some Q&A one-on-one with Scott and the panelists afterwards. But let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.